Hello. So for those that don't know me, I am Alexander Skobronsky. I am a ninth grader at the Altamont School in Birmingham, Alabama. Hundreds of years ago, the only way to participate in world events was to take a horse and travel weeks or months to a war zone or a place of conflict. However, with current technology, we can participate in world events thousands of miles away, and we can try to help people in need. In view of Russian aggression on Ukraine, our school decided that we would like to help as much as we can, focusing in particular on people our age who have also been greatly affected by the war. Therefore, we organized a digital meeting with guests from Ukraine and Poland who will share their thoughts and ideas on what we can do and should do to assist Ukrainians while we are in the United States. We are joined by Dr. Alexei Serdyuk, who is a professor of psychology and sociology at the University of Kharkiv. He has a PhD from the University of Michigan, and he also has links to the University of Mississippi. His research is in epidemiology and criminology. He currently serves as a lieutenant colonel of the Ukrainian police in the city of Kharkiv. When we talked to him on Sunday and asked if it is safe for him to talk, he responded, "Oh yes, the bombardment is not here. It is far away, about 6 miles away." Welcome, Professor. And
Thank you.
I would also like to introduce Dr. Katya Zakhorodnya, who is the head of the Department of Rehabilitation Medicine in Ivano-Frankivsk, Ukraine. She has been in contact with refugees and she treats patients amidst the war. Josh and Meg McClug are two fellow Alabamians from Birmingham working in Poland on relief efforts for Ukrainian refugees. They are also missionaries with a Christian organization. They divide their time between Warsaw and the Polish-Ukrainian border, and Meg is a registered nurse by training. We are also joined by Weronika Velichko, who is a 16-year-old 10th grader. She loves dancing and is a straight A student. She lives in Novomoskovsk in central Ukraine, and she wanted to invite her friend to the meeting, and we are very happy to have her. And we also met her English teacher on Zoom, and I can tell she really taught her very well. Welcome, Weronika, and well, would you like to introduce yourself?
Hi, I'm Nastya. I'm 8 years old. I live in Novomoskovsk. I like dancing. Now I am studying at the university in Dnipropetrovsk. Now I have distant education. Also working. Work in cafe.
All right, thank you. And I'd also like to introduce our school principal, Mr. Bendel.
Just lean in and wait.
Yeah. And I'd also like to thank my teachers, especially Ms. Dill, Mrs. Williams, Mr. Dominguez, and Mr. Rogan, who helped made this event possible. Before we talk with our guests, I would like to spend several minutes on a brief history of current events. So I'll pull up the presentation. All right. Okay, so these are the locations of all our guests. We can see Josh and Meg between Warsaw and the Polish-Ukrainian border. They switch between them. Dr. Katya Zakhorodnya is in Ivano-Frankivsk. Weronika Velichko and a friend are in Novomoskovsk. and Professor Serdyuk is in Kharkiv. So I'm going to briefly touch on the long history of Ukraine and also the shared history between the Ukrainians and the Russians. The lands of what is today Ukraine and Russia over centuries were inhabited by Slavs, and also many different people have come through there, such as the Huns and Khazars. And in the 8th and 9th centuries, the Norse came from the north and began to travel along the many rivers of the land. And they also began to settle. And then they sort of merged with the local culture and created the Kievan Rus. And I'd also like to briefly touch on the history of the name of Ukraine. So Ukraine comes from the word Okraina, which means borderland. So when this area was part of many different empires, it was referred to as the borderland. And that is where we get the term the Ukraine. However, today, Ukrainians prefer their country to be simply referred to as Ukraine, as it highlights their independence. The modern Ukrainian identity was really forged by poets and writers. And here we have Taras Shevchenko on the left and Ivan Franko on the right. And Ivano-Frankivsk, where Dr. Zahorodnia is, was named after Ivan Franko. And this sort of cultural revolution came in Austrian Galicia, as they allowed great freedom of cultural expression. However, during the end of the Russian Empire in the First World War, there were two revolutions in 1917. The first overthrew the Tsar, and the second one brought the Bolsheviks to power. And the Ukrainians believed that now the time had come to finally assert their independence, and they fought for it. They fought the White Russians, the Bolsheviks, and the Poles. However, unfortunately, in 1921, the Bolsheviks conquered Ukraine. And in the 1930s, Stalin sent his enforcers into Ukraine to seize all the grain and wheat from Ukrainian farmers. And this began a horrible period known as the Holodomor, where upwards of 10 million people died of famine. And though Ukraine technically was known as the Ukrainian Soviet Socialist Republic, it had very little autonomy, and all decisions were practically made in Moscow. And in the German invasion of the USSR, about 8 to 10 million Ukrainians died, and of those 1.5 million were Ukrainian Jews. However, in 1991, the Soviet Union dissolved, and a more than 92% vote in favor of Ukrainian independence was held. And thus, independent Ukraine was born. And Ukraine switched between pro-Russian presidents and pro-West presidents. In 2014, it saw the ousting of the pro-Russian president Viktor Yanukovych in the Maidan Revolution. However, in response to this, Russia annexed Crimea and began supporting rebels in the eastern Donbass and Luhansk regions. And of course, on February 24th, Russia monstrously invaded Ukraine. So that's a brief history of, so that is a brief history of Ukraine. And now I would like to turn to Professor Serdyuk. Professor, tell us where you are and what you do. I understand your normal work before the war was a professor of epidemiology and criminology. Is that correct?
Yes, correct. You absolutely correctly introduced me. Now I'm the head of research lab on crime enforcement, but during this war, I'm changing my position. Now I headed the lab of psychological support of police. So my primarily area is psychology. Yes, BA and MA on clinical psychology and economics, PhD in sociology. And now I'm API of number of research projects focused mainly on community policing, drug-related crime, and substance use and misuse. And in 2015, I was a visiting scholar and senior research fellow in University of Michigan in Addiction Research Center and Institute of Social Research. During this visit, I took a road trip from north to south of United States with my son, who was 19 years old at the time. And we visited several universities where my colleagues work on our way. The final destination of our trip was the University of Mississippi in Oxford, where my regular collaborator in psychology and social work research worked. We have been cooperating with him for almost 20 years. Cooperation began in Ukraine with the United States supported research project. This project continues to this day. It project supports by National Institutes of Health, also connected with drug use problems. But I'm stayed in Ukraine, and a lot of friends and collaborators go to the United States. One of them in Mississippi, in Oxford. It was a memorable journey in the good way. Yeah, I'm under the good impression. It greatly influenced on my son. Throughout this journey, we communicated with a lot of professionals, both in my area and his area. After arriving back in Ukraine, my son immediately got a job in IT company and now had several Ukrainian American projects in this branch. So this was very memorable trip and under a good impression of all South states.
Thank you. And in your opinion, how has the war affected students and also young people such as your son?
Of course, the war had a bad effect on people of all ages. But what about children and adolescents? Around 200 children died, around 400 injured around Ukraine, almost 100 in the Kharkiv city. If you do not consider direct murder, firstly, the harm begins with the destruction of educational institutions, schools, universities, which led to interruption of the educational process. 60 schools, 30 kindergartens, 7 universities, and 8 hospitals were destroyed in Kharkiv, in my city. I didn't speak around Ukraine, this number much bigger. Secondly, for students and adolescents, this influence is complicated by the fact that psychological trauma inflicted by the war on a personality. This personality of adolescents has not yet been fully formed, and this trauma will remain forever, leaving an imprint on all behavior until the end of their life. This is very important. This requires serious attention on psychologists now. Now even adults feel abandoned, and teenagers are more vulnerable in this sense, in my opinion.
Yes, well, Professor, we are far away, but there's, you can see, incredible support for your efforts, and we do want to help in any ways we can. And now I'd like to turn to Dr. Zakhorodnya. Doctor, how has your life changed? And in your opinion, what can we do to help?
Okay, thank you for the question. I already talked with you about this. It is a very complicated situation here because like 2 times, 3 times, 4 times a day we have alarm. Yeah, you know, and a lot of people, every morning we are like counting how many deaths was at night, was a day, and it really disaster here. So 2 times a day, 3 times a day, when it is alarm, we are going to bomb shelter. Yeah, like to wait and hope, like hope that everything will be okay with us. But everything changed. It's absolutely changed, because the day before the war, we were going to work, we have vacation, we spend time with friends, and now we are just like working and waiting to live normally. Yeah, it is like this now. And you know, a lot of people from the hot places like Kharkiv, like Donetsk, Lugansk, they're coming here to the west of Ukraine, and we are all helping them. We are like giving them food, giving them places to live. So we are working so much to help everyone. It's only thing that we can do here now.
Yes, thank you, Doctor. We understand it's very difficult. And Josh and Meg, you have seen it from the Polish side, where Ukrainian refugees are fleeing. So what have you seen, and what have you been doing to help?
All right, I'm gonna share some pictures with you guys, if that's okay. Make sure it's showing up. Do y'all see that?
Yeah.
Okay. So this is kind of what we've seen so far. This is just data from the UN that shows close to 3 million refugees entering into Poland, and you can see the rest of the countries where people have fled to. It's just around 6 million right now total that have fled out of Ukraine into the surrounding countries. This is kind of a process of how people come into Poland when they leave Ukraine. So at the border right now, we've served several different times, and the wait there can fluctuate. You can be waiting to enter Poland for 8 hours, or it can be 1 hour that day, or at the beginning it was up to 3 days. So you can see as you arrive, there's a lot of humanitarian aid and supplies available, but there's still a lot of confusion about what the next step is. Many people arrive and don't know where they're going to go from there, and there's not a lot of information to tell them this is your next place where you can find somewhere to stay for a few days. There is a refugee center that's only a few miles from the border that we've been serving at. So this is what that looks like. They are allowed to stay 1, maybe 2 nights to try to find another connection to either a host family in Poland or in another country in the EU. So Spain, Finland, Germany, Denmark, France, they've all got buses that come daily to pick up refugees from these refugee centers and help them find housing and a more permanent solution. If they don't travel to another country, then they begin traveling throughout Poland, or maybe even into the EU. But we've been serving in the train stations, bus stations, and other areas around Poland where people are in the midst of finding somewhere else to go to, traveling either from a refugee center to a house or to their next destination. So you can see these pictures. You can see the older women here that are carrying bags. Oftentimes people have left. They may not even have had passports, so it causes difficulty to travel. They're carrying as much as they could while they could manage loading into a van or into a bus when they got picked up. We give out food and supplies in these areas and try to connect them with somewhere that can be a little bit more permanent. If they still can't find somewhere, once they've reached a major city like Warsaw, then they go to there's another refugee center that they can go to, and that can be up to a week. You can see this one is a little bit more organized. There's a little bit more structure to it. But you can see there's kids areas. It's a similar setup with the cots and the sleeping arrangements where there'll be up to 1,000 people sleeping in a big area. These are typically in large expo centers around the city, and there's smaller ones as well. And yeah, it's all volunteer ran. This isn't, government organized, government ran, but there's all volunteers basically around Poland who are giving up their day jobs or giving up what they were doing before to help out. The guy in the middle down at the bottom, you can see him. He showed me a picture of his home, which was in Mariupol, which, if you've heard, has been completely devastated. And then on the right, you can see the food bags that are available for people to take whenever they leave, so they'll have a meal for the road in their next stop. And we've also been in refugee homes. So this is an area where once they leave the expo center, they're able to go to a refugee house if there's one available, and they can stay there up to 1 month. The pictures on the left side are ones that we've been working on to renovate. That will house up to 5 families. And then the ones on the right is a previous orphanage. You can see my son Oliver there cutting the weeds in the yard to get ready for a playground to be installed, and they have a playroom there for families. So that walks through the process of where people are going to once they arrive and where the Ukrainians are kind of finding themselves. So it's a lot of uncertainty when they step into Poland, but we're trying to serve and help in each one of these locations that we can.
All right. Okay. Thank you. It's very moving stories. And Veronica, yes. So how has your life changed since the war started? I'd like to hear it from your perspective.
Because I quit my job. Also, my nurse and her mother left to Croatia. It was very sad. I miss them very much. Also, now I'm. It is very scary when you sound sirens, when planes fly. I even saw a rocket flying over my city. But I am grateful to our defenders that in my city, compared to other cities, everything is calm.
Yeah, it's very moving, and you and Nastya as well. I'd like to just say that you are the reason we made this call. We did this to show that we do want to help. We do want to support you. Do you have any idea of how people in the United States can support you?
I think that now we need more communication. And moral help.
Psychological help.
Yes, thank you. And I'd like to quickly go back to Dr. Zahorodnia and also put that question to you. How do you think people can help? How do you think people can, help people that are affected by the situation?
Yeah, thank you, Alexander. I'm thinking, and I have like idea, because we have food, yeah, we have clothes for all people, for teenagers, for children, yeah. But if you are like a child, yeah, and you come from Donetsk to here, yeah, and you are like orphan. You are without parents, you are alone here in refugees where there are a lot of children, yeah, and you're just listening alarm, and you're listening everywhere is war, some planes are flying. It's like for children, for teenagers, it's psychologically very hard, because teenagers and children are weaker psychologically, so they need like to be busy. I think what you can help, how you can help, it will be great if you can entertain these children, yeah, if you can like communicate with them, if you can play games just like online, maybe you can like make some programs with them, speak, I don't know, even like give them book what you're reading and they will read too. Just make computer game, yeah, you can play online with like you, because they are also children, they are teenagers like you are, so you can like make their time busy, yeah, their mind need to be busy, because if it is free, they are thinking about the war, they are thinking that they are alone, they like need your psychologically, yeah, they need some positive thoughts, and I'm sure you can do it. It's on you, really, because you're a teenager. You are thinking the same like they are, just they are in some substances that are not so good for them. It's like my idea, my opinion.
Thank you, Doctor. Very moving. And Professor, we are far away, but there is great support for your efforts. And if we want to help people in, from your view, what can we do?
From my point of view, there was I want to highlight several areas which the help will be most relevant. First point is without any doubts, it's targeted delivery. It's like delivery of last mile, because the most vulnerable populations, including many children, adolescents, with entire families, lived in most dangerous areas. So most vulnerable populations in the place where delivery was hardest. So when delivered humanitarian aid on the general basis, a lot of them became without this help. So targeted delivery, this is most effective. Secondly, Katya says about this is psychological help. Psychological help, along with medicines, food, this is third main kind of help must be provided. I mean, professional long-term support. For example, in schools, school psychologists properly trained with methodological support from research centers that already have experience working with such categories. So Katya say about this. Thirdly, this kind of help can be shaped within the projects called from person to person, like peer support, peer-to-peer, school for school, clinic to clinic. These projects prove themselves well. This project visible and transparent, and help delivered this way does not dissolve in the sea of general help, which undoubtedly huge, but this help from person to person, from school to school, leaves a personal mark on the lives of people, of the adolescents, when they get this from person to person. For all life, they mark their life. We get this help from this particular person, and their life trajectories was under effect of this help throughout their life, living the memories. Mm-hmm. Such peer-to-peer assistance works throughout their life, and allowing teenagers feel that they have not been abandoned. They are not alone, because this personal connection from one particular child to other, from one teenager to other teenager. This is social technique, well known. This technique effective, proved the efficiency through all 20th century during all conflicts, and it works because this help comes from a personalized source or a specific person. Its help comes from not impersonal organization, from person to person. This is my opinion.
Thank you, Professor. And we heard very moving stories today, but I think we also heard a lot of what we can do to help. We can help provide psychological help, but there's also, as the professor said, we can help organize targeted delivery of, things that people need. So there is tremendous support for your efforts. And I would like to thank all of you for coming here, and we are very sorry for what is happening and what you are going through. But everybody is thinking of you. Now, let me turn to my school principal, Mr. Bendel. Mr. Bendel, we heard all these great ideas of how we can help from the United States. Do you think our school would be able to implement at least some of those ideas we heard today?
Thanks. Let me see if I can get a picture here. I appreciate you putting this event together for us, and I'm sure we'll find some ways that we can help. I know your family has a foundation. I have some former students in Ukraine now, so we're eager to find ways that we can help. You know, it's important for the Altamont School to be connected globally and to understand that our community not only includes students from around the world, but that our lives are interconnected in important ways. So finding ways that we can be proactive and connected to the real world and not just learn about it in books is super important. So, you know, war is terrible, and we of course want to help those affected in all the ways we can from here. And so, you know, I wish everybody who has joined us today, thank you, Colonel, Dr. Veronica, Nastya. I wish you all freedom and safety and peace.
Thank you.
Thank you, and thank you all again for your participation. It is unfortunately the end of our meeting, but it is the beginning of our efforts and the beginning of our engagement. And that concludes the meeting. Thank you very much.
Thank you.